Officially say the pandemic is over. Uh, we've got a full house this morning, and so many people coming out to see me. Just really, so many people coming out to see me. Do we have anybody on the agenda besides me? I'm not sure. No. Thank you all for coming out and filling up our room, and to those who are watching on Facebook, we welcome you to the fray this morning. For those that can make it, it's so much better to do this in person. And we've struggled ever since the pandemic to try and rebuild. And I know that Rosemary has a big fan club. I think there may be one or two from Friendship Village. How many are from Friendship Village? Does anybody exist anywhere else? Good. We thank you for that. Well, I don't even know that we then need to introduce Mark Young, who's the marketing director, since you all know him anyway. But there may be a few that don't. I want to say that we're really able to do, I think, a much better job with our lunch talks because of the association with Friendship Village. They've now been a sponsor for about 5 years or so, and that's enabled us to expand our program. We've added 2 more programs to our lunch talk year, and that again enables us to expand the number of speakers that we have. And the fact that you're here supporting that and some more supporting the great MC, really, yeah, there you go. I think that would be good. All right. Before we get going, normally we have a video, but I would much rather introduce this gentleman in person because he doesn't get over here very often. Please give a big welcome to Mark Young, Marketing Director at Friendship Village.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It is nice to be here in person, and thank you all for coming out for me today. I have the pleasure of working with Rosemary just about on a weekly basis. She does a lot of things for the marketing committee that we have over at Friendship Village, and it's always been a pleasure. I look forward to seeing her all the time. I learn new things, so I think you're all in for a treat today. One more time, how many people are from Friendship Village? Enough said, Vic. We thoroughly enjoy these talks. We have supportive plans for years to come, so we love this partnership. We want to continue with this partnership. And if anybody wants to learn more about Friendship Village, I'm right in the back, and I'm sure you can ask your neighbor how it is for them. But thank you very much. We enjoy this, and good luck today, Rosemary.
Oh, thank you, Mark. It's so good to have you here in person rather than just on tape. So just one thing that I want to point out here in the beginning. We are in preparation, and I'll talk about it a little bit at the end, preparing next season's lunch talks. But we thought it might be really helpful, particularly now when we've got a full house, if you have any ideas for subjects or individuals that might make a good speaker for our Lunch Talk series, we'd like to know about it. Otherwise, we decide for you, and then you get to say, nah, I'm not interested. But this is an opportunity for you to be a part of the Lunch Talk series by giving us some recommendations. So by the end of the program, we have a little form at the back, and we invite you to take one, fill it out. Marlise has got them near the back, and that really helps in making the selection for our next season. And it's really getting more competitive, because in the past, sometimes it was a struggle just to fill it out, but now we've got a list of potentials that is much greater than we're able to handle for the entire season. But we'd like to know who you would like to hear from, and what subjects you might have an interest in. So let me take time to introduce Rosemary James to you. Rosemary comes from a little town in Louisiana called Kentwood, and she grew up there but wound up coming to Arizona in about 1965. She's been a classroom teacher, a school district staff developer, a principal, everything connected to education. And a couple of things that I just asked her what we might not know about her. One is she told me that she has traveled to all 7 continents. And that doesn't make me happy, because I'm trying to do the same thing, but I've just been incontinent in terms of trying to reach all of them. And she said that she is a terrific Creole cook. So I believe she's promised that at the end of the presentation, she will have an entire Creole meal for everyone that is here. So in advance, please welcome our Lunch Talk guest today, Rosemary James.
I wish you could see you from here. You're beautiful. A full house. This is awesome. Thank you for being here. And to those who are watching virtually, including my family in Louisiana, hi and welcome. Yes. Thank you, Carter and the Tempe History Society, for inviting me here today to share my story with you. I believe that hearing stories helps others to understand us. Do you believe that? Yes. And the better we understand each other comes perhaps the ability to get along better and the desire to help each other and to live in harmony with each other. And that's a good thing, isn't it? Yes. And so I will share a very abbreviated story of my life in the Deep South with you today. When my husband and I came to Arizona, it was with the intent to go back to Louisiana. But we got involved. We got degrees from ASU. We raised our 2 sons here, and we never considered going back to Louisiana. Not only did I spend most of my professional career here in Arizona, but I also choose to associate with organizations that are in Tempe. For example, my sorority, Tempe Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta, and some are here, yay. And my church is just a hop, skip, and a jump over there on Baseline, and some of the members of our church are here. And though when I first came from Louisiana here, we lived in Tempe, but I've also lived in Mesa and Phoenix. But now in my twilight years, I'm back in Tempe, living at Friendship Village, Tempe. That wonderful life plan community, and loving it. All stories and descriptions of these stories that I will share with you this morning are as close to exactly the way they happened. I contacted siblings many times during my writing of this talk to make sure that what I was thinking was right on. And so everything has been verified along the way. At the end of my talk, please compile your questions and comments that you might want to share. And that will happen at the end of my talk, okay? So, here I am, about 6 months with no idea what life would be like growing up in the Deep South, but I would soon find out. I'm calling this talk Growing Up, Overcoming Growing Up in the South. And here are the objectives for this talk. I'm going to tell you just a bit about Louisiana. It is growing up and being surrounded by my family and living day to day in the atmosphere my family created for me and my siblings that helped me most to overcome. So I will share a bit about my family. I feel that's important for you to know. Since my talk is about growing up in the South, we're going to talk just a bit about Jim Crow. What in the world does this mean? And how did it come to be that the southern states were used, this term was used to describe them? So I'm going to share some interesting information about that. And then I'm going to take you with me on some personal, to experience is a better word, to experience personal stories about living in the South. And finally, I'm going to bring you to the present and share my passion today and how the past is linked to the present. Greatness is not measured by what a man or woman accomplishes, but by the opposition he or she has overcome to reach his or her goals. That is a quote by Dorothy Height, a civil rights leader and past president of my sorority, Delta Sigma Theta. I ask you to keep that quote in mind as you experience my story this morning. I also ask you to measure your own life against this quote and see if there are challenges in your life that might relate to what I'm going to share with you. I challenge you to do that today. When I was asked to present what it was like to live in the South during the blatant Jim Crow era, I asked myself first, what did I want you to leave with? And I came up with those objectives that I shared with you earlier. Then the challenge was, how do I structure this talk so that you not only hear my story, but you experience my story, you feel my story, you live my story. And so we will see what you think on the other side, okay? So everybody is familiar with Louisiana that's shaped like a boot. It is surrounded by Texas, Arkansas, and Mississippi. I was born and lived in my early childhood in Kentwood, Louisiana. Whoops. And you can see where it's located. That's the green star there on the map. That's Kentwood. That's where I was raised. I was born and lived in Kentwood with my mom and dad in a little wood frame row home that looks much like these in this photo and these. We lived in an all-black community, of course. I was about 4 or 5 years old when we moved to live with my maternal grandfather in Greensburg, Louisiana, in St. Helena Parish, Louisiana. Did you know that Louisiana is the only state with parishes. It does not have counties, correct. So notice how close Kentwood and Greensburg are, only 17 miles apart and only about a 20-minute drive. So we just moved a hop, skip, and a jump from Kentwood. The population of Greensburg now is a whopping 718 people. And here are the demographics of Greensburg now. It is, by the way, 13.8% of the residents of Greensburg are 65 years or older. And those are the demographics of that 718 people. So I will now introduce you to my family. I want you to get the whole story of my overcoming, and my family certainly played a huge part in that. Remember, we moved from Kentwood to Greensburg, and we lived with Mom's dad. And this is Papa. I'm going to begin with Papa, Mom's dad, a good-looking man. In fact, Papa used to say this, "Ay, gracious, by George, I was pausing to the ladies an acre around." And he was quite a character. And this is my Papa, dressed as he always dressed on the farm, with one strap hanging loose in his overalls. Papa was 74 or 75 in this photo when we moved to the old homestead, as we called our home there. He was born in 1874. This is the old homestead. This is a computer-generated exact photo of our 6-room home in the country where I lived until marrying and coming to Arizona. My friend Ron, who's sitting right over, right there. Ron used Photoshop program, if you're familiar with that program, to design this house based upon my description, guys, my description of what the house looked like that I lived in, because I had no photo. I had no photo, but now I do. This is it. Thank you, Ron. It's awesome. All of my family members now have that photo. So, my granddad was 23 years old when this home was built in 1897. The home was about 50 years old when my family went to live with Papa. It was built of wood with no insulation. Just one layer of wood separated us from the outside elements. It had a tin roof, and I loved the rain, which would pound on the tin roof, sort of in a sing-song manner almost. I would sit next to that big window in Papa's room with a book in that big cushiony chair and read and listen to the rain on the tin roof. It was good. Papa was ingenious in building this house, I think. I want to describe some of the methods he used. One method was the way the rooms in the house were laid out. The rooms across the front, there were 3 rooms across the front and 3 rooms across the back. They were directly opposite each other. When the doors were open between the rooms, you know what happened, right? The wind just breezed right through. The air conditioning. A second air conditioning method was used by my Papa was to separate the kitchen from the main house. So when we first moved there was a porch that led from the back porch out to the kitchen. Now, soon after we moved, then he tore down the kitchen and moved it to the main part of the house. But I thought that was another ingenious method to air condition. And then the third air conditioning method that he used was to build the home on stilts, as you see in this photo. See that? Stilts ventilation, cooling. Okay, my papa was loved by everybody in the neighborhood, black and white alike. He was a very skilled farmer, and neighboring farmers would seek his advice. And Papa loved helping people. He was just that kind of person. He also loved to play cards and party. So we would have parties at our house often, card parties a lot, because he just loved being around people. Now, Papa was an expert farmer, I think. He had about 100 acres of land, which was considered well-to-do in those days for a black person. He grew acres and acres of snap beans, cotton, and sugar cane, which provided his income each year. Some of the farmers had tractors to help them with their farming, but Papa used a horse. All of his farming was done with a horse. Nellie was the old gray mare. We loved Nellie for what Nellie did to help us on the farm. And we had, as the kids say, an out-of-sight garden. Papa set aside about 1 or 2 acres, and we had all kinds of veggies, and as you can see here, like these you see here in the photo. All of us were expected to help with chores on the farm. Slop the hogs, feed hay and corn to the cows, feed the chickens and ducks, hoe the grass from the crops, bring in wood for the fire to keep us warm and to cook. It was exhausting. Very hard work, farming. We arose before school early enough to complete some chores and before school, and continued when we arrived home after school. Meet my beautiful mom. In her younger days, in her more mature days. Mom finished 8th grade. And a black person with an 8th grade education in those days was considered well educated. In fact, an 8th grade education was sufficient for one to become a teacher, as my Aunt Loretta did. She finished 8th grade, became a teacher, taught for many years, retired from teaching. I learned to read and write before I began school as a first grader. They didn't have kindergarten in those days. I watched and listened to my mom reading daily, and she taught me to love reading and to write my name and alphabet and words and stories before I began first grade. Mom cleaned house for Miss Betty, a white woman, who lived in another neighborhood about 2 miles from where we were. I believe Mom cleaned her home about every two weeks for $3. I would often go with Mom to help, and my job was to dust the furniture. Mom also ironed for Miss Betty. Does this look familiar? That's what we ironed with. And we put the iron in front of the fireplace to heat it. We had several of these, by the way, so we'd change them out, and that's the way we iron. And we also use these irons for something else. Yes! We would put them in front of the fire, wrap them in an old shirt or towel, put them in the bed, foot of the bed, and boy, did it feel good to get into that bed at night. Nice warm bed. We sure did use them like that. And now, meet my dad. As a teenager, and in his later years. My dad was handsome too. Dad dropped out of school as a second grader to help provide for his family of 10 siblings. Dad was number 5 down from the top of 11 children. Dad never learned to read or write, though I tried to get him to allow me to teach him, but he always said he had something else to do. I always thought it was because he could not bring himself to let me teach him what his family could do. His wife could read and write. His children could read and write. Mom pulled me aside one day and said, "Do not approach your dad about learning to read or write again." And I didn't. So he never did learn. Dad worked at several jobs. One was hauling pulpwood. Then he began working late until 11 at night at a factory that made boxes. And he also worked a double shift at a dairy, same time he was working at the factory. So he would go to work till 11 at night, come home, get up about 4 in the morning, and go to the dairy. When I was in college, Mom and Dad moved to Baton Rouge in 1966, where Dad worked for a concrete and pipe company and hauled pipes all over Louisiana, Texas, Mississippi, all of those nearby states, okay? My dad was one of the most intelligent people I knew. In fact, I always thought my dad was gifted in spite of the little education that he had. He could spend 5 minutes with a person and describe that person to a T, and sometimes he would warn us about certain people, and we always listened because Dad was right almost always. He was that keen at judging people. The story I will share with you now will illustrate my dad's high intelligence. On his job in Baton Rouge, where he hauled pipes, someone would pull, now remember, he can't read, right? Someone would pull Dad aside, pull out the map, and talk Dad through the route to the place he was to deliver products, listing landmarks, distance, and such to help Dad find his way. And I tell you, my dad always found his way to that place and back to his work station. And then, when he needed to deliver to that location again, all his boss had to do was say, "Deliver to such and such." And that was all they needed to say, because once he had been there, he always remembered how to get back there. I thought that was amazing. Dad was a natural-born mechanic. He was amazing at that. He learned his skills with no formal education. He learned to pull a car or a truck apart, put it back together, better, much better than when he took it apart, because he had to. That was the only way he kept his automobiles and old truck running to make a living. So he had to, and he was really good at it. So I'm so proud of my awesome dad. It was during the winter months, as we gathered around the iron heater in Mom and Dad's room, that Dad would often tell us stories about Jonas, the slave, and old boss, the plantation owner, and other tales. We would beg our dad for stories, and I have collected Dad's stories. I have begun. I'm still in the process. My family they can't hardly wait to get this book that I have promised them. I did write my life story. All of my family members have my life story in their possession, but they're also going to get my dad's stories. Awesome stories. We had our favorites. Bad Stimulation was my favorite. So he was a great storyteller. My granddad, my mom, my dad were kind, hard-working people who would give their last to those in need. they were the perfect models for helping me overcome. As a child, I saw my mom and dad kneel by their beds to pray at night, and we all said our prayers before our blessing before we ate. So my siblings and I grew up doing the same thing. Sundays were go to church. I mean, we got up, Mom prepared a nice breakfast for us, we dressed in our Sunday go-to-meeting clothes, and we were off to church. About once a year, several small churches came together for a rousing revival. You experienced those? Oh my gosh. They lasted about a week, and they were something else. They had ministers there. Wow, preaching. Yes. I grew up in the Sheridan Chapel AME Church. This is my church. More recently, when I grew up, it was a wood frame building, a white building, looked much like this, but this is the church now, okay? It's called Sheridan Chapel AME Church. What does AME stand for? Yes. Woohoo! The AME, let me give you just a little bit of information about it, okay? The AME Church is a Black Methodist denomination. It was the first African American denomination organized in the United States. And unlike most other churches, which were formed because of theological differences, not so for the AME Church. They were formed because of discrimination. For example, they were relegated to the gallery. They were not allowed to sit in the lower level, and lots of other reasons. But that's why AME Church came about. The AME Church is the largest Black Methodist denomination in America, with about $2.2 million congregation, okay? Several historical Black colleges and universities are affiliated with the AME Church. Additionally, the African Methodist Episcopal University was established in Africa in 1995. That's the proud church I grew up in. And this is the first African Methodist Episcopal Church in America. That's what it looked like. Wow. There are 9 siblings in my family. Here we are. This was taken in 2007 when I visited Louisiana during Thanksgiving. I'm going to share 2 stories about 3 of my siblings in a minute, but I want to set these stories first by sharing a bit about a very special white family who lived near us in Greensburg. There was this white family who lived about a mile or so from our farm, and my family considered them friends. Hear that? Friends. And I believe they considered us friends. Miss Florence would borrow a cup of sugar, other stuff from us, and Mom would do the same with her. I would sometimes spend the night along with a sibling. Mom never sent us alone. We always went in twos to spend the night with Miss Florence when her children grew up and left home, and Mr. Fred was away on business or something like that. So we would go and spend the night with Miss Florence. Now, we would play with Donald, Dwight, and Camille. They were the children of Miss Florence and Mr. Fred. And we would do that in the neighborhood, but we would not interact with them outside of the neighborhood. That's the way it was, my mom often said. Donald and Dwight often came to play cards with Papa throughout the year and just to visit sometimes. It was a friendly white-black relationship. Now, these are two of my older sisters. That's Dee on the left. Dolores is her name. We call her Dee. On the right is Marie. We call her Ree. And there they are in their later years. And this is my younger brother. He's the baby. AJ Jr., we call him Butch. Now I'm going to tell you stories about these three siblings, okay? So, my sisters Dee and Ree. All right. Though Dee lived with her dad and Ree lived with her fraternal grandma, they would come and spend summers and holidays with us in the country when they weren't in school. They were about the same age as Donald and Dwight, our white neighbors. Okay? When I was about 5 or 6 years old and Dee and Ree were teenagers, I noticed that Donald and Dwight seemed to come over more often when Dee and Ree were home. I would hear my mom say to my sisters, "You be careful around them boys." And they would giggle and run away. I believed that Donald and Dwight were courting my sisters. And I would tease them, even as a youngster, about having a white boyfriend. And they would tell me to hush, that I didn't know what I was talking about. So, as I wrote this talk, remember, I called my siblings to verify stories, right? So, I called my sister Dee. And I said, "Dee, I'm writing my story about Dwight and Donald now." And Dee giggled, and she said, "Tenderoni." Now, tenderoni, as long as I remember, it was a term that my sisters and I used to describe a boy or man who was good-looking, attractive, fine, if you will, okay? So when Dee laughed and said, "Yeah, girl, tenderoni," I knew that I had this story correct. Black girls and white boys have found each other attractive, but they are expected to stay miles apart in relationships. My mom and dad moved to Baton Rouge in 1966. That's when President Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act in '64, a couple of years before. There was so much unrest in our country at that time. The year was about 68 or 9 when my brother Butch's school chose him to integrate Baker Junior High School, very near where my mom and dad lived. I remember that Mom especially was totally against her son going into a dangerous situation like this. And Butchie didn't want to go either. He wanted to stay in school with his black friends. So finally, after much talking to the teachers, talking with family members, Mom and Dad finally said yes. And so, in spite of tremendous fear on the part of our entire family, my brother helped to integrate schools in the Baton Rouge area, starting in junior high. He would go on to be an outstanding student, excelling in academics and sports, especially basketball. Each of my siblings went on to have very successful careers. 3 siblings have passed. The 6 of us who are living are enjoying our retirement years. I began school as a first grader. That's me and my brother Robert. I am a preschooler here. I'm about 5 years old, I guess, something like that. There were 2 school campuses in Greensburg. One was for whites and the other was for coloreds. Each campus housed both elementary, middle, and elementary students. These two different schools sort of remind me of the Three Little Pigs, that story about the three little pigs. For the white school was built of bricks, while the colored school was built of, unpainted wood at that, okay? It was wood frame building, unpainted. We had outhouses at our school while the white school had indoor plumbing. I remember trying to hold it as long as I could. I did not want to go to that outhouse. Now, mind you, we had an outhouse at our home too, but it was just cleaner than school. I would try and hold it, I tell you. When we received our set of books at the beginning of each school year, they had the names of students written in them and the name of the white school down the road. I never remember receiving a new set of books during my elementary and high school days. The same was true of student and teacher desks. We got the cast-offs from the white school down the road. I learned to love learning and was an excellent student all through school. I was very active in high school and participated in various clubs like cheerleading, the choir, the dance troupe, the oration club. I did it all. I was secretary of the student council. I was a proud young person and felt there was nothing I couldn't do. I heard Mom and Dad and Papa being examples for us. How could I not overcome with so much wind beneath my wings? Oh, yes, Mr. Stallworth. He was my high school algebra teacher. He expected every student to achieve his or her highest, and he worked us hard in his class. He was a no-nonsense teacher, a taskmaster. Mr. Stallworth never complimented students when they did well in his class. He simply said, "You did what you were supposed to do." He is the teacher who, in my senior year of high school, requested that I report to his classroom one day. I was so afraid. For Mr. Stallworth usually only called students to meet with him who were not doing too well in school. He was going to get on them big time. When I arrived to his classroom, he asked, "So, what are your plans when you finish high school, young lady?" When I said I was not sure, he said, "Well, what about college?" I said, "Mr. Stallworth, my parents don't have money to send me to school." Mr. Stallworth said, "You're going to finish as either valedictorian of your class or salutatorian. And if you want to go to college, you can." I did want to go to college more than anything. I did finish high school as salutatorian, and Mr. Stallworth guided me through the process of applying to colleges and helped me apply for a merit scholarship, which I was awarded. It paid for tuition, room and board, and books during my 4 years of college. I worked part-time for money for incidentals. I participated in a writing contest when I taught 3rd grade in 1980. I wrote an essay about Mr. Stallworth called "Mr. Stallworth, A High School Experience." There it is. All of the participants' essays and poems and so forth who won were placed in a book. I've kept this book all these years, and from time to time, I sit and I read the story about Mr. Stallworth. he influenced me so much. He helped me overcome. Grambling was classified as a college in 1962, the year I entered. 1962. It's now Grambling State University. I entered college there, and I want to share just a bit about, now Grambling, by the way, is a historically black college, yes. And I want to share with you just a bit about those. I think it's interesting. The term HBCU, short for historically black colleges, refers to any academic institution established prior to 1965 whose principal mission was to educate black people. However, today it is more integrated. It's just that in those days, only black people went to those schools, okay? And so there are 102 of them today. There are 6 historically black colleges and universities in Louisiana. Now, it was my 4th day on Grambling's campus in 1962 when I met the guy who would become my husband. Elliot is the love of my life. He taught me so much about life, and in particular to love traveling, which you heard earlier. Now, Elliot and I visited 6 continents together. We were planning our 7th continent to Antarctica when he died. And I finished that goal by traveling to Antarctica with a good friend, a mutual friend of ours. It was very emotional and very beautiful. So Elliot and I were blessed with 2 sons, Aaron Jr. and Gregory, whom I just adore. They are so awesome. They were in college when these photos were taken back in the 1990s. They are both engineers, and they are very self-sufficient, independent, and successful men. I'm very proud of them. I also have a lovely daughter-in-law and the sweetest, most beautiful granddaughter. Here's my son Gregory today and his wife Kitty. I always say if I could have chosen a wife for Gregory, it would have been Kitty. And this is my granddaughter, Amber. And this is my oldest son, Aaron. And this is me, my immediate family. And one more look at them. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Just love it. Now, what does Jim Crow mean to you? Let's get to this thing called Jim Crow. You're bringing your understanding of Jim Crow to this setting. I realize that. So look at this definition here that I'm going to share with you. I did research, and this is what I came up with. I think it's the best definition I have seen. It's racial segregation and discrimination enforced by laws, customs, and practices in especially the southern states of the United States. So, notice that the definition says especially the southern states of the United States, right? So, did Jim Crow exist in other parts of the United States, you think? Absolutely. Absolutely. But it was prevalent in the southern states. I'm sure you can probably think of examples of Jim Crow in the South, like separate toilets and so on. But to show you how senseless it was, listen to this. Did you know that it was unlawful for any amateur white baseball team to play baseball on any vacant lot or baseball diamond within 2 blocks of a playground devoted to the Negro race? Isn't that something? Yeah, and of course there were separate schools and the list goes on, okay? Now, are you familiar with this guy, Thomas Dartmouth Rice? Raise your hand if you are familiar. Okay, listen to this. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Okay, Thomas Dartmouth Rice. He began performing an act that would make him famous and was called Jumping Jim Crow, or Jim Crow. That was his act, okay? Rice was in his 20s, around the early 1830s, when he began performing his act. He would put on not only the black face and makeup, but he would dress shabbily to imitate in his mind and the mind of white people, black people, okay? And so Jim Crow was a name used by white people to refer to black people and was just as derogatory as the N word. To call someone Jim Crow was just to point out, not only to point out his skin color, but it was to reduce that person to the kind of character that Rice performed on stage. Jumping Jim Crow, or just Jim Crow, became shorthand, or one shorthand way, for describing African Americans in this country and the official laws that define, as you saw in the definition, okay? Now, this happened in 1963. Participants in the March on Washington, now you remember that. This is the event where Martin Luther King gave that famous I Have a Dream speech, okay? Jim Crow was symbolically buried at that event, and this is the ceremony, okay? Now, you know a bit about my family, you know a bit about me. Now, you will experience some of my life as a black person in Jim Crow South. Deep in Louisiana, in the small town of Kentwood and Greensburg. A black person in the South in those days lived with Jim Crow laws from the day they were born. So to truly experience my life, if you're white in this room, and in the virtual, because there are some people watching online, I'm asking you to do this. I want you to imagine that you are in black skin, okay? And it doesn't matter if you grew up in Jim Crow South as a white person. I'm taking you there as a black person, okay? And that's quite different, okay? Now, if you're black in this room, and also in virtual land, it doesn't matter whether you grew up in Jim Crow South or some other part of the United States. You have experienced what I'm going to share with you simply because you are black, okay? So the journey is not to make you feel guilty, but it may make you feel uncomfortable. I'm going to ask you to go with me anyhow, okay? You just stay with me. I saw lots of signs designating areas for white and colored. And I would ask my parents, why? And they would say, That's just the way it is. And when we began hearing about Martin Luther King, especially, Mom and Dad would say, "That's just the way it is now, hon." And she would say, "Dad and I are praying for a better life for you and your siblings." So I grew up hearing Mom and Dad talk about Martin Luther King Jr. and that he and other people were fighting for us, that Martin Luther King was a great person. Who recalls the tragic death of Emmett Till? Any of you? Okay. It happened during the height of the civil rights movement. I was 11 years old at the time Emmett was murdered. In August of 1955, while visiting family in Money, Mississippi, 14-year-old Emmett Till, an African-American from Chicago, went to Bryant's store with his cousins. It was alleged that Emmett flirted with a white woman while in the store. And the white woman's husband and her brother, both KKK members, kidnapped and brutally murdered Emmett, dumping his body in the Tallahatchie River. The brutality of his murder and the fact that his killers were acquitted caused the murder to become an icon of the civil rights movement. Now, travel back with me some 7 or 8 years before Emmett was murdered. It's late one afternoon. I'm in Kentwood, in the Kentwood neighborhood. School is out. The children in the neighborhood are home. Dad is home from work. I am 4 years old. You hear that wailing? Folks in the neighborhood are gathered in their yards, on their porches. There's a group in our front yard. "What's wrong, Mama?" I asked my mother. "Why are the people crying?" Mom holds back her tears. She keeps me inside our home, away from the world outside. A look of sadness and horror on her face as she tries to distract me with toys. We were living through a horror similar to the Emmett Till story, only it happened 7 or 8 years before. Jerry lived across the street from us, or the road, wasn't a street, the road from us. Jerry was about 16 years old and in high school and was beaten to death by a group of white boys. Why was Jerry beaten to death? Because supposedly he made advances toward one of their girlfriends, very similar to the Emmett Till murder. I did not understand the specifics of this tragedy at that time. I don't understand it today. I just remember that something terribly wrong had happened in our neighborhood because of the way the adults were behaving. Everyone was up in arms. The uproar continues today as these tragedies continue today. The murder of George Floyd is an example of today's horror stories. But here is some good news. It seems that at least a few are being held accountable these days. And the uproar is heard from people of all colors and races and all around the world. And this is good, that we may be coming together somewhat to make the world a better place for all of us. Though I was only 3 or 4 at that time, I understood death, and I had some notion of how fragile the relationship was between blacks and whites. Now, I knew this by observing my mom and dad. Observing them, especially when they were around white people. As they interacted with white people, it was always yes, ma'am, and no, sir. And they referred to white people as Miss Betty and Mr. Jewel, never calling them by their first name only. When having conversations with a white person, I observed mom and dad never quite look them straight in the eye. They usually avoided direct eye contact with certain people, not all, certain ones. And as I grew old, I remember asking my mom one day why she called the white woman whose house my mom cleaned Miss Betty, when Miss Betty didn't call her Miss Juanita. And by now you know what Mom said, right? It's just the way it is. That's just the way it is, hon. It's just the way it is between white people and black people. I am now taking you with me to Kentwood, okay? The little town where I grew up as a young child. So come with me as we ride in the car with Mom. Now, this is a Saturday morning, and this is a regular trip. Almost every Saturday, Mom drives to Kentwood to buy food and necessities for the next week for us, okay? So here we are in the car. You're with me, and you are a black person, okay? So there's a car ahead of us as we ride down the highway. Do you see it? You see it? There's a car in front of us. And in those days, the roads were not paved, they were gravel. And the car in front of us is causing a lot of dust. We stay behind the car. We eat their dust because we did not dare pass them and have them eat our dust. When Dad was driving, we would sometimes yell to him, "Flow it, Dad, flow it, pass that car." And he would say, "Stop it, I know what I'm doing, be quiet." I dreaded when we approached cars that carried white people on the gravel roads. It would be a dusty ride. Okay, so we have arrived in Kentwood, okay? And we're walking down the street on our way to the only grocery store in town. Now, there are some white people walking towards us. You see them? Okay? Now, be careful, be very alert. If they move to the side, kind of on the sidewalk, then that means we can stay on the sidewalk and just kind of walk past them. But if they spread out across that sidewalk, hit the grass, as black people say. You step, and not only that, but you step off on the street side. Because what difference if a car hits me? I'm worthless. I'm not worth a plug nickel, as my dad used to say. Anything that's worthless, my dad used to say, it's not worth a plug nickel. So, okay. We have arrived at the general store where we shop. We always hoped it wouldn't be busy because Mom always wanted to get in and out and back home as quickly as possible. Now, in those days, most of the groceries were behind the counter, and the clerk would place whatever you wanted on the counter himself, okay? You can see how it's set up there. That's much like the store that we shop there. Okay, we have arrived at the little general store, so follow me inside and do as I say. Oh no, this morning the store is busy with white people. No, wait, come back here. Let's stand over here in this corner away from the counter. We have to wait until all the white people have been taken care of. There, the store person is beckoning Mom to come forth. Now she can come and he will help her. You have noticed by now, we have to always be on the alert, don't we? And when we are around white people, that could be a matter of life and death. Black people could get into serious trouble if we are not alert. Now, sometimes Mom treated us kids to an ice cream cone when we went to town, so come on, let's go across the street and get an ice cream cone. Follow me. No, you still don't get it. You are with me. Let's go to the colored sign. Okay, would you like to go to a movie with me? Let me share that experience. All right. So, I love to attend the movie with the big screen. I know there is a well-lit sign right there on the street where you can buy your ticket. No, that's for the white people. Okay, follow me. We are going to go down the dark alley. And there's a door down the dark alley. We will open it and enter the tiny hallway where there is a window to purchase movie tickets just inside that door. Now, come with me as we walk up the narrow, winding stairs to the balcony where colored people sit. The white folks sit in the lower area of the theater. The seats in the balcony are worn, some with tears, and they smell moldy from use. We sit. The movie starts. We sit back to enjoy the movie when someone in the balcony throws something down on the white folks below, popcorn or something. Some white people yell, "You N-word, better not do that again or we'll have every last one of you thrown out of here." And somebody in the balcony, probably the person who threw whatever it was, yells back, "You H-word, shut up and watch the movie." Oh boy. We finished watching the movie with no more disturbances. Though I only experienced something like this once as I was attending the movies in that theater, I remember wishing that my people would not mess with the white people in the theater. I just want to come to a movie and enjoy it. I was always a bit fearful after that popcorn confrontation when I attended a movie. For one never knew how far a white person would go when they felt a black person had stepped out of line. The county fair was held in Kentwood in the fall each year. Shh, listen, Mom and Dad are talking. They are discussing when they will take us to the fair. Now they are making sure that we go when colored folks can attend the fair. For you see, attendance was segregated, with whites attending the fair first over a number of days and colors following the whites. Mom and Dad had to make sure to take us when we were supposed to go. By the time I was in high school, I began hearing about this leader, Martin Luther King Jr. I was in college in 1963 when Dr. King gave his now famous I Have a Dream speech in Washington, D.C. And in that speech, he said that when freedom rings out throughout the Union, then all of God's children will be free. I could take lots more time to share what life was like growing up in those Jim Crow days. Instead, I want to do what Dr. King did. I have a dream. He shared his dream of what life could be like for all people. So I'm going to bring us up to the present and do my best to connect the past and the present so that you get a feel for how my life is influenced today as a black person by my past, especially as one who grew up in the South before the Civil Rights Act of 1964. In the late 50s and early 60s, during the Civil Rights movement, history shows that we black people were mostly in that struggle alone. I remember having conversations with my friends and family and hoping for and dreaming that all people would come together and help people of color in achieving racial justice. The Civil Rights movement pushed us forward, but I say people of color continue to struggle for equal justice according to the laws today. Those laws guaranteed by the Constitution, we still struggle to achieve those today. Sure, but to me it seems that some people of all colors and all races all across America and all across the world are joining in the struggle for justice for all people. Do you feel that way, or is it just me? It seems to me this is good. This is good news, okay? I'm telling you, I experienced the civil rights movement. I looked around at all of those people I walked with. They were mostly black, okay? Now, look around. Look around. To be asked to come today and share my story, that you even want to hear my story, is evidence that things are changing. Things are moving forward. Things are becoming better. And no one has left. Oh my gosh, you're still here. This is great, okay? When will we see equality for all people? I don't know that answer. Nobody does. But I do know this, that bringing about equality for all people starts at the level of the individual. And this is significant. Hear me. It starts at the level of the individual. It starts with you. It starts with me. Okay? And that look can take many looks. It can start with your family, your immediate family. It can start with your church. It can start with a club that you belong to. It can start with Friendship Village, where we live. All of those are families, and you are an individual within that family, and it can start with you and me. So, there's something we can all do, correct? Are you with me? If we do nothing when we see racist behaviors and out there, what are we doing? You're condoning. Yeah, you're condoning that behavior. Okay. What if we all interrupt that racist behavior that we are seeing? We do something. You don't know what to do always. Hindsight is 20/20, right? But do something. Do something to that person who's standing in front of you saying something that you know is not right. It's racist to the core. Do something. And it may not always, just do the best you can, I guess that's what I'm saying. But do something. Okay? Now, so we have come a long way, but we have miles to go. So I call today's struggle for equality a new civil rights movement. Many of us are approaching it with some hesitancy, as I just mentioned, and maybe anxiety also, knowing exactly what to, not knowing, excuse me, exactly what to do or say. And I see that happening from both sides. But I think it is time for us to stop whispering and start sharing our stories and listening to each other about this thing called racism, and sharpening our tools that help us to do all that we can as individuals and collectively to interrupt and dismantle racism in real life. If more of us would practice not looking the other way, just think what the world would look like today. We could make significant change. We all can play a part in becoming allies for all people. This is my hope, this is my joy, this is my dream, that all of us join together for the good of all. For listen to this, for until I am free, no one is free. Okay? Think about that. Until I am free, no one is free. That's the way it works. We have to work together to make it free for all people. That's very important. When we join together in this struggle for racial justice for all, as Dr. King said, we allow freedom to ring. And when we let freedom ring from every state and every city all over the world, then all of God's children will be, in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last. Say that with me. Free at last. Thank God Almighty. I'm free at last. We are free at last. Let's work together to make it happen.
Yeah, don't go away. Wow, that was impressive. And one of the reasons we invited Rosemary here today is because February, of course, is Black History Month. And it gives us a time to reflect and think about all the things that she brought up. One question I wanted to ask, and then we'll, if anybody does have a question, raise your hand. No, you talked about Martin Luther King, and Martin Luther King really, of all of the black leaders, was probably the most inspirational, certainly a poet in what he wrote. If he were here today, what do you think he would be saying about the current state of affairs? Come on over here.
Think about that question, okay? Because you may have a better response than I. Okay, I would think, knowing what I know about Dr. King, I would say that he's saying, thank God we are doing something. It's better today than when I was here. But he would look at us and say, my child, we have miles to go. Join me. Let's all join together. Because I know that Dr. King, he struggled to get all people to help him in that struggle for equality for all. So I think he would be pleased with the fact that it's more diverse, if you will, all of us struggling together, but he would still be he would still want to push us forward. We still have so far to go yet. That's my thing. But
6 decades have gone by
yes,
since Martin Luther King was such an influence, and I just wonder how much more progress we could have made in 6 decades. Anyone have any questions? Yes, let me, if you do have a question, wait for me, because we've got to make sure that we've got a mic so those watching the stream can hear.
Did your boys ever come to you with a story about something that happened to them that was racially related, and how did you respond?
yes. Simply because they are black, okay? So they are bound to have experienced something. And those were opportunities for Elliot, my husband, and me to sit down and even share some of the stories that I've shared with you. They know my story. They know their dad's stories. That's the most effective way to get across whatever point we're trying to make. And so you've heard of the talk, right, that black people have with their children, especially their black sons. Yeah, we had that talk with our sons. If you are stopped, keep your hands on the steering wheel. Don't make any sudden moves. Say yes, sir, or no, sir, and those kinds of things. So many conversations about different aspects of living as black men in America. Okay, it's tough.
In your presentation, I was quite impressed by the happy days of your childhood. You did later on talk about the real difficulties of interacting with whites in the South. And sometimes we hear just those negative things, which are very true, but within all of that, when the families were together, there was a lot of joy in your growing up. So I appreciate those happy memories.
That's why I wanted to share. I began my story with the joys. Yeah. My family is awesome. As I shared at the beginning of this presentation too, my siblings and family members and folks, I have a large family, okay? They are watching. They are so supportive. I can't tell you how many conversations I had with various members of my family as I was writing this to verify. So they got just as involved in this process as I did. It was really, they helped me to overcome they were the most influential aspect of overcoming, my family was.
And one thing, you came here, about 1965?
Yes.
Just after the Civil Rights Act.
Yes.
Can you contrast a little bit what the life experience was like between living in Louisiana and then in Tempe, Arizona?
I remember when I arrived, Elliot was on his way to school that morning, and he says, make sure you lock the door when you leave. This is just one, we didn't lock doors. I didn't know what that was about. We just in and out of our country home. But so I had to learn to do that. But it was my first class at ASU. Okay? I'm the only black in the class. That is hard to walk into an environment like that and you're the only one. Now, I can share with you that since I have been in Arizona, I have experienced that a lot. And so I don't like it, but I have learned to live with it. That I am often the only black person at that upscale restaurant in Scottsdale having dinner with my family. Or I am the only black principal in all of Kyrene. Or I am the only person of color in various situations. So that was so stark and revealing when I first came, okay? Just the people, I'm from the South, the culture is different. Just the interaction between people when I came here was quite different. So my learning curve went way up in a lot of relationship type experiences here when I came. I didn't see too many other people who looked like me. That was disturbing at first. And it hasn't changed too much over the years. So, yeah.
Which essentially tells us we still have a long way to go.
You bet.
And I hope
Yes.
it's not going to take another 60 years to get where we should be.
Well, if just the people in this room, okay? If you take the charge, the challenge that I hope you heard me share with you this morning, that will make a huge difference. It starts, like I said, it starts with us, okay? One person can make a difference. So if we all commit, we can do this.
Well, I've spent some time teaching, and when I was younger, like most, I felt that my real goal was to change the world. And I've learned, having been beaten down many times, that's not going to work. But what I did learn is that maybe you can have some influence on one person. And if you can influence that person, they in turn may be able to carry the message on. So I'm not changing the world, I'm just going for one person at a time.
Well, it's like the pebble in the water. That's what you're describing. One person has that interaction, and that person gets it, and then they influence someone else. Yeah, that's the way we do it.
I want to thank you again for coming today. This was absolutely terrific. Don't go away yet. We're rather cheap people, but we do have some ways of saying thank you. First, this wonderful envelope, courtesy of the city of Tempe. We don't give those to everybody, but it's maybe a collector's item that you'll want to put on eBay. And we always like to share something of Tempe, and we do that quite frequently with the work of Richard Nearing. If anyone knew Richard or Dick Nearing, he was an incredible pen and ink artist, and this came much later in life. He had another profession, but near the end, he did these incredible pen and ink drawings for which I always despised him because I can't draw a straight line. So this, and you might even remember this from the 60s, it was still in use, the Tempe Depot. And Richard captured this back in '88, and the depot was built in 1924, this particular version. So that is our gift to you, and we appreciate your taking all the time today. So let me talk a little bit about next month. March 8th is the next time we will gather. Let me turn that off and go to this one. We will have Dr. Vanessa Fonseca Chavez here, and she's going to be talking somewhat in a contrast or maybe parallel to today's discussion, building a sense of place in eastern Arizona and how that might, not might, but does compare to the Tempe experiences. And so we hope that you'll be able to make it, and every one of you who's here should be here next month. And, and listen, Mark, you make sure, how many are in Friendship Village? All right, we want 800, and, well, we'll give a 50, all right, 800 of Friendship Village should be here next month. That's your job as marketing director, all right? I really want to thank everybody for coming out. Please, where's Marlise? Right there in the back, waving. Take time to pick up one of these forms because these lunch talks are done for you. And sometimes our ideas of what you like are not what you like. So this is an opportunity for you to tell us the subjects you would like covered at the lunch talks. And if you know anybody who is a great speaker, an orator, like yours truly, and thank you for coming out to see me today, and incidentally our speaker, please just take a second to fill out this form. And also, if you have any thoughts about how we conduct this, we want to know. If they're negative, just keep walking out of the building because I don't really want to hear that. There is so much going on at the museum besides our lunch talks. We have events, particularly the performances at the museum, February 10th, February 11th, that's just coming up this weekend. Mariachi Rubor on Friday, Kawambi Omowali on Saturday. Also, people are very interested, and many have never been to the Eisendrath House. Have you heard of the Eisendrath? Yeah. Have you been to it? Would you like to go to it? All right. See me afterwards, give me $50, and I will set up a time for you between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. this Saturday where you can get in. And for the rest of you, if you mention my name, they'll let you in free. There's so much going on. Also, I think at the front desk, we've got a list of all the programs. Also, I want to just take time for a second to welcome back, it's only on a temporary basis, but Dan Miller over in the corner, who was with the museum before it was a museum. Dan was born in 1897, and he started working here when he was 5 years old, just retired a few months ago. And Brianna King, who has assumed his responsibility for controlling all of the aspects of streaming our lunch talks, filled in for Brianna today. So I want to thank Dan for all of his work. You owe me $20. All right, I think that is everything that I've got. Again, thank you so much for coming out. This is the best crowd we've had in since the pandemic. So God bless you all. Come back and see us next month. Bye-bye. Valentine's Day.